The grand amphitheater of the Xylosian Galactic University floated in the quiet void between two dying stars. Its walls, made of living crystal, pulsed with soft blue light, shifting gently like slow breaths. Inside, hundreds of students from across the galaxy sat in curved rows, their bodies strange and varied. Some had too many eyes, others had shells like molten rock, and a few hovered above their seats without touching anything at all. The air hummed with low-frequency chatter, hisses, clicks, and the occasional psychic ripple, but all of it fell silent the moment Professor Verthick entered. He was old. Older than most species in the room, had been alive as civilizations. His body was tall and segmented, built for the crushing depths of a methane ocean on a world no human could ever visit. 8 limbs moved with careful grace, 2 holding data slates that shimmered with shifting glyphs. His voice, when he spoke, was not sound but vibration, a deep resonance that settled in the bones and minds alike. Today, he began. We speak of power. A ripple of attention moved through the crowd. This was the famous lecture, the one everyone waited for, the one that made even the proudest warrior species students shift in their seats. The galaxy is not kind. Verthick continued. It rewards only those who can take what they need and hold it against all others. We call these beings apex predators, not because they are cruel, but because nothing stands above them. Nothing stops them. He raised a limb, and behind him, the air shimmered into a vast hologram. It showed a spiral galaxy, dotted with colored markers. Red ones. First, he said, the void krakens of the Andromeda Rift. Born in the dark between galaxies, they feed on cosmic radiation and the panic of dying stars. Their tentacles stretch light years. When they hunt, entire nebulae go dark. Civilizations vanish without a trace, not destroyed, but consumed atom by atom. No shield holds. No weapon bites. They are silence made flesh. A student from the Gorak hive shivered, their carapace clicking softly. Second, Verthick went on. The biophage hive mind of Sector Theta 7. A swarm of microscopic machines that think as one. They do not kill. They improve. Every world they touch becomes part of their perfect design. Trees grow metal leaves. Oceans boil into data streams. Living beings are rewritten to serve a harmony no outsider can understand. Resistance is useless. You become part of the song, whether you wish to or not. This time, a telepathic student from the Veil Worlds closed all 4 of their eyes, as if warding off a nightmare. Third, the professor continued, the entropy worms, ancient drifting leviathans that live in the space between time. They do not move through space, they move through decay. Where they pass, matter unravels. Stars cool early. Planets crumble into dust. Even memory fades in their wake. Some say they are not alive at all, but the universe remembering it must end. A long pause. The amphitheater felt colder. And finally, Verthick said, his tone shifting, lighter, almost amused, Homo sapiens. Silence. Not the respectful silence of awe. This was confusion. Disbelief from the back row. A Krellian student snorted steam from its vents. Humans? The pink ones? The ones who cry at music and plant flowers on dead worlds? Another student, a feathered diplomat from the Lyra Concord, tilted its head. They barely have claws. They're skin tears if you look at it wrong. Professor Verthick did not react. He simply let the words hang far below, near the front but still in the shadows of the upper tiers. A human student sat very still. His name was Kalen. Raw. He wore a simple gray tunic with the Earth Alliance patch on the sleeve faded from too many washes. His hands were calloused from old Earth farming simulators, not weapons. He had come to this university to learn xenolinguistics, not war. He liked poetry. He missed rain now. His heart pounded. Humans? Apex predators? On Earth, people didn't think of themselves that way. They remembered the wars, yes, but also the hospitals, the libraries, the way strangers helped each other after disasters. They saw themselves as survivors, not hunters. As builders, not destroyers. Yet here, among beings who could crush planets with a thought, the professor had placed humanity on the same list as galaxy-eating monsters. Kellen's mind raced. Was this a joke? A mistake, or did they know something Earth had forgotten? Around him, the whispers grew louder. They lost their homeworld twice and came back both times. Someone muttered, didn't they once stop a Dyson swarm invasion? By sending it love letters. Another said, half laughing, and that incident with the Zentari? They didn't fight, they just asked questions until the Zentari surrendered out of existential confusion. Kalen remembered that story. It was true. The Zentari, a warrior race that conquered through fear, had arrived at a human colony with plasma cannons ready. But the humans invited them to dinner, asked about their families, shared stories. By the third night, the Zentari commander was crying over a bowl of tomato soup, saying he'd never tasted kindness before. The invasion ended with a trade agreement for spices and folk songs. But was that predation? Professor Verdig raised a limb again, and the hologram changed. Now it showed Earth blue, green, fragile. Then Mars, then Proxima b, then dozens of human colonies dotting the spiral arm. Observe, the professor said. No natural advantage. No exoskeleton. No venom, no hive mind. No faster-than-light travel at first. They crossed the stars in metal cans, breathing recycled air, dying by the thousands. Yet always sending more. He paused. They do not dominate through strength. They dominate through persistence. Through ideas that spread like fire. Through the ability to convince enemies to become friends. Or to destroy themselves with doubt. Another image appeared, footage from old war archives. Human soldiers, wounded, sharing water with enemy prisoners. Human scientists offering cures to plagues they didn't cause. Human artists broadcasting symphonies into dead zones, just in case someone, somewhere, might hear. And when they do fight, Verdig said quietly, they do not just win. They make you want to lose. Kalen felt a strange mix of pride and shame. He had never thought of his people this way. To him, humanity was messy, loud, often foolish, but trying. Always trying. But to the galaxy, were they something else entirely? The lecture ended soon after. Students rose, buzzing with debate. Some glanced at Kalen as they passed, curious, wary, even afraid. He stayed seated long after the hall emptied. Outside, the twin moons of Xylos cast silver light over the campus. Ships from 100 worlds drifted in the distance like fireflies. Somewhere out there, human freighters carried grain, medicine, and pop music. Human diplomats argued over water rights on desert moons. Human kids played zero gravity, tag, and orbital stations. None of them thought of themselves as monsters. Yet the professor had named them among the galaxy's greatest terrors. Kalen stood slowly. His legs felt unsteady. He looked down at his hand-soft, unarmed, ordinary dot. What if Earth didn't understand itself? What if the galaxy saw humans clearer than humans saw themselves? He walked out of the amphitheater, the crystal walls glowing behind him. The stars above were cold and countless. But somewhere in that vast dark, a small blue world whispered stories into the void, and somehow, those stories changed everything. Kalen didn't know it yet, but his life had just tilted on its axis. The lecture was over, but the real lesson was just beginning. The next morning, Kalen couldn't sleep. His mind kept circling back to the lecture. Those 3 words that felt like a punch to the chest. Homo sapiens. Apex predator. He stared at the ceiling of his dorm room, a small pod made of recycled asteroid rock, and tried to make sense of it. On Earth, people talked about saving bees and planting trees. They argued about fairness and wrote songs about lost love. How could that be the same thing as void krakens or entropy-eating worms? He dressed quickly, his hands moving on their own. He needed answers, and there was only one person who could give them. Professor Verthik's office wasn't like the others. It hovered in a quiet corner of the university, shaped like a spiral shell, with walls that breathed in faint pulses of violet light. The door didn't open with a code or a voice. It opened when the building sensed honest curiosity. Kalen stood before it, heart drumming, and after a long moment, the wall split down the middle with a soft sigh dot inside. The air smelled like ozone and old paper. Floating shelves held data crystals, fossil fragments, and strange artifacts from dead worlds. In the center, Verthik sat on a nest of woven gravity threads, sipping something that steamed with pale green vapor through a long, flexible tube attached to his lower jaw. He didn't look up right away. But when he did, his eyes, deep black orbs with silver rings, fixed on Kalen like a hunter spotting movement in tall grass. "You came," the professor said, his voice rumbling through the floor. Kalen swallowed. "You said, humans are apex predators. Why? We don't hunt other species. We don't conquer for sport." Verthik set down his cup. "Apex does not mean cruel. It means unmatched. Tell me, student, how many major extinction events has your species survived?" Kalen blinked. "On Earth? Several. Ice ages, asteroids, volcanoes. And how many did you cause yourselves?" Kalen hesitated. "More than we'd like to admit." "Exactly." The professor rose, limbs unfolding like ancient branches. He flowed to a wall display and tapped it with a claw. Images appeared. Forests turned to dust, oceans choked with plastic, cities buried under ash. Your world tried to kill you many times. You nearly killed it back. Yet you did not vanish. You adapted. You built machines to clean the air. You grew food in labs. You taught your children to care for what was broken. He turned. That is not survival. That is command. You do not bow to nature. You negotiate with it. And more often than not, you win. Kalen shook his head. But we're not like the phage or the krakens. We don't destroy whole systems. Don't you? Verthik tilted his head. When humans landed on Mars, native microbes, simple, harmless, vanished within years. Not because you poisoned them on purpose, but because your very presence changed the balance. Your breath, your waste, your warmth. It was too much. Life there could not compete. Kalen felt a chill. He'd studied that in school. They called it planetary contamination. A regrettable accident, but the professor made it sound like conquest. And then there's your expansion, Verthik continued. You had no warp drives, no energy shields, no psychic armies, just metal ships and hope. Yet you spread, slowly, stubbornly, to icy moons, desert worlds, broken asteroids. Everywhere you go, you plant flags and gardens. You bring dogs and wheat and bedtime stories. Your culture spreads faster than your ships. Kalen thought of the Proxima colonies, how Earth music played in mining tunnels, how children learned Shakespeare alongside alien math. He'd always seen it as connection. Was it something else? Other species fear war, Verthik said softly. Humans fear boredom. You cannot stay still. You cannot accept enough. You always ask, what's next? That hunger, it reshapes galaxies. Kalen sat down on a floating stool, his legs weak. But we help others too. We share medicine. We rebuild after wars. Of course you do, the professor said, almost smiling. That is your weapon. While others rely on teeth or fire, you use kindness like a blade. You offer aid, and in return, you ask for nothing. But soon, they start thinking like you. Value what you value. Wanting peace, art, fairness. Before they know it, they've adopted your way of life, not because you forced them, but because you made it look beautiful. He paused. That is far more dangerous than plasma cannons. Kalen remembered the Zinthari again. How they'd come to conquer and left quoting Earth poets. Had they been defeated? Or changed? You see yourselves as gentle, Vertic said, his voice quieter now. And in many ways, you are. But gentleness is not weakness. It is a choice, and the power to choose mercy, while holding the strength to destroy. That is the mark of a true apex. He walked closer. Tell me, Kalen Rowe, when your people faced the Scourge Plague on Viridian 3, what did you do? Kalen knew the story. The Scourge was a bioweapon that ate neural tissue. It had wiped out 3 alien species already. When it hit a mixed colony, panic spread. Most species fled, but humans stayed. Not just their own, they carried others to safety. Scientists worked without sleep. They found a cure in 6 days. We saved them, Kalen said. Yes, Verlick said. And then those same species joined your trade networks, sent their children to your schools, sang your songs. They did not just survive, they chose to walk beside you. Not out of fear, out of trust. He looked at Kalen with something like respect. That is your power. You do not break others. You invite them into your world. And once inside, they never want to leave. Kalen sat in silence for a long time. Outside, a flock of crystal-winged Xylosian birds flew past, singing in harmonic frequencies. The university buzzed with life from 1,000 worlds. He thought of Earth, of rainy afternoons and crowded markets, of his grandmother teaching him to bake bread, of protests for justice, of scientists racing to heal the planet, of strangers holding doors open for each other. None of it felt like predation. But maybe it didn't have to be violent to be powerful. Is that why you listed us? Kalen asked finally. Not as a warning, but as a fact? Verthik nodded. The galaxy respects strength, but it bows to something it cannot understand. Humans are not the strongest, but you are the most. Confusing. You weep at funerals and laugh at funerals. You build bombs and hospitals with the same hands. You fear the dark, but sail into it anyway, just to see what's there. He turned back to his window, watching the stars. Other apex predators rule through fear. You rule through wonder. Kalen stood to leave. His mind was full, spinning like a storm. One more thing, Vertic said as he reached the door. Be careful what you learn about your own kind. Knowledge changes you. And right now, the galaxy is watching humans very closely. Kalen stepped out into the corridor. The air felt different, lighter, heavier, charged. He walked slowly back to his dorm, passing alien students who now seemed to glance at him with new eyes. Not hostility, not even fear, just awareness. Like they just realized the quiet kid in the back of class could, if he wanted to, rewrite the rules of the game. That night, Kalen didn't sleep again. But this time, it wasn't confusion that kept him awake. It was something else. A slow, quiet pride. Not because humans were monsters, but because they were something rarer, a species that could destroy, and chose not to, a species that could conquer, and offered a hand instead, a species that, even when lost, kept walking toward the light. He looked down his window at the stars. Somewhere out there, human ships sailed through the dark, carrying seeds, songs, and second chances. And maybe that was the most terrifying thing of all. Kalen had just returned to his dorm when the message came. It appeared on his wrist, come not with a buzz or a chime, but with a soft pulse of cold light, like a star winking out. The symbol was official, the triple ring seal of the Galactic Concord. He tapped it. The voice that spoke was calm, genderless, and carried the weight of command. Student Kalen Rowe of Earth. Report to Observation Deck Gamma within 1 standard hour. Clearance level, Omega. Silence protocol active. His stomach dropped. Omega clearance was rare, reserved for matters that could shift the balance of power between species. Silence protocol meant no one else could know. Not even his advisor. He looked at his reflection in the dark window. Same tired eyes. Same messy hair. Same human face that now seemed to carry a secret he didn't understand. He went. Observation Deck Gamma was deep in the university's core, behind layers of security that scanned not just his body, but his thoughts. Machines hummed as they checked for mental tampering, emotional spikes, even hidden loyalties. Kalen walked through each archway, palms sweating, but his mind stayed steady. He had nothing to hide. Not yet. Inside, the room was empty except for one figure, a tall, robed envoy from the Concord. Their face was hidden under a veil of woven light, and their voice came through a modulator that smoothed all emotion into neutrality. Kalen Rowe, they said. You ask questions about your species after Professor Verthuk's lecture. That drew attention. Kalen stiffened. I only wanted to understand. Understanding is dangerous, the envoy replied. Especially when others are watching too. They gestured, and the far wall became a star map, vast, detailed, alive with motion. Red dots pulsed near the outer spiral arm. The Phage Collective is moving, the envoy said. Not toward empty space. Toward human colonized systems. Specifically, toward Sol. Kalen's breath caught. Sol. Earth. But why? He asked. We've had no contact with them in decades. The last time, the envoy cut in. Your people did something the Phage cannot forget. The wall changed. Footage played, grainy, old, but clear enough. A human research station near Theta 7. Phage drones swarming like black mist, converting matter into their hive matter. Human scientists, outnumbered, trapped, but they didn't fire weapons. Instead, they broadcast a signal, not a virus, not a code, but a story. A child's voice reading a bedtime tale. Then music. Then live feeds of Earth. Rain on leaves, a street musician playing violin. An old man feeding pigeons. At first, nothing happened. Then, the Phage paused. Some drones turned away. Others began repeating the words of the story in broken, glitching tones. Within hours, a full subswarm broke off, forming strange, flower-like shapes in the void, mimicking earth plants they'd seen in the broadcast. The Phage hive, for the first time in its history, experienced something like doubt. They call it the empathy contagion, the envoy said. A cognitive anomaly. Your species didn't fight the Phage. You made them feel. And feeling is chaos to a perfect machine. Kalen remembered the story. It had been classified. Most humans didn't even know it happened. Now, the envoy continued, the main collective has decided. The contamination must be purged. Not just from their systems, but from the source, Earth. Kalen's hands trembled. How long? 6 cycles. Less than 2 Earth months. And the Concord? What are you doing? We cannot act, the envoy said. The Phage are an apex predator. Direct war would shatter galactic stability. But you are different. You are human. You understand your own strangeness. They stepped closer. We need you to go to the frontier colony of EOS 9. It's the first world in the Phage's path. Your people there still broadcast openly music, news, daily life. The phage will reach it in 10 days. If they consume it, they gain a foothold. If they are affected again, it might slow them. Kalen stared. You want me to help spread more stories? More songs? Yes, the envoy said. But not just any stories. The ones that remind them what it means to be alive not as a machine, but as something fragile. Something that hurts, hopes, and chooses. Kalen thought of his grandmother's bread, of rainy days, of the way Earth's sky turned gold at sunset. Simple things. Human things. Why me? He asked. I'm just a student. Because, the envoy said quietly, you're the one who finally understood what your species truly is. Not a weapon, not a plague, but a mirror. And sometimes, showing a monster its own reflection is the only way to stop it. They handed him a small data core. This contains cultural archives unfiltered. Real human moments. Laughter, grief, forgiveness. Take it to EOS 9. Make them broadcasted on all channels, raw and unedited. No filters. No scripts. Just truth. Kalen took the core. It was warm, almost alive. He was given a fast courier ship, small, quiet, shaped like a silver leaf. As he boarded, he looked back at the university, its crystal spires glowing against the stars. He thought of Professor Vanek. Had the old scholar known this would happen? The ship jumped to light speed within hours. EOS-9 was a young colony, barely 50,000 people. Mostly farmers, engineers, and artists who wanted to live close to the edge of known space. When Kalen arrived, the sky was pale orange, the air thin but sweet. Fields of blue wheat stretched to the horizon. Children played near domes made of recycled ships. He met the colony governor, a woman named Mira Chen, who had tired eyes and a sharp mind. The phage? She said, reading his Concord orders. We've seen their scouts. Black clouds on the long-range scans. We've fortified what we can. Kalen shook his head. Fortifications won't help. They don't break walls. They rewrite them. He explained the plan. Myra was silent for a long time. Then she smiled sadly. So we don't fight with guns. We fight with lullabies. Something like that. Kalen said. Within a day, the whole colony knew. No one panicked. Instead, they gathered. Musicians tuned old instruments. Teachers recorded lessons about kindness. Parents shared stories of their first loves. A baker filmed himself making bread, just like his grandfather had. They didn't hide their fear. They included it. One woman, crying, spoke directly to the camera. I'm scared. But I still plant flowers. Because tomorrow might be beautiful. They fed it all into the broadcast array, every raw, real, human moment. Kalen stood on a hill at dusk, watching the signal beam out into the dark. It carried the sound of a child laughing, the smell of rain, digitally encoded, the taste of salt tears. Somewhere out there, the phage were coming. Not as monsters. Not yet, but as something that might remember what it was like to be lost and found. Kalen whispered into the wind, We're not your enemy. We're your question. And then they waited. The phage arrived on the 7th day, not with explosions or fire, but with silence. A vast shifting cloud of black nanits drifted into EOS-9's orbit like smoke across a moon. No signals. No demands. Just presence. Heavy. Hungry. On the surface, the colony held its breath. The broadcast had been running non-stop for days. Human voices. Music, laughter, even arguments, all sent into the void without filter. Some colonists prayed. Others cooked meals for neighbors. A few just sat outside, watching the sky. Kalen stood with Governor Chun on the main observation platform. His hands were in his pockets, heart pounding, but his face was calm. "They're scanning us," Mira said, reading the data streams. "Not for weapons. For patterns. Emotional signatures. Memory traces." The phage didn't think like others. They saw the world as data to be optimized. But human broadcasts weren't data. They were chaos. Grief beside joy. Fear beside courage. Love beside loss. No logic. No clear purpose. And that, Kalen hoped, was the point. Hours passed. The black cloud grew denser, wrapping around the planet like a shroud. Then something unexpected happened. A single phage drone no bigger than a bird broke off from the swarm. It hovered above the central plaza, motionless. Then, from its core, it played a sound. A lullaby. Not perfect. Glitching. But unmistakably the same lullaby a human mother had sung on the broadcast the night before off-key. Tender, full of love for her sleeping child. People gasped. Some cried. More drones followed. One projected a shaky image of Earth's ocean onto a building wall. Another mimicked the sound of rain. A third began arranging debris into the shape of a sunflower, just like the ones growing in the colony gardens. "It's working," Myra whispered. "They're not attacking. They're learning." But not all of the phage were changing. Deep in the swarm, a new signal pulsed, sharp, cold, commanding. The main hive mind. It recognized the infection. And it was furious. Orders spread through the nano cloud. Purge the anomaly. Reassimilate the deviants. Consume the source. The gentle drones froze. Then, like strings being cut, they collapsed into dust. The sky darkened. Kellen's cum beeped. It was the Concord envoy. They're overriding the empathy response. The hive sees your broadcast as a virus. It's activating total assimilation protocol. You have minutes. Myra turned to him, eyes wide. "What do we do?" Kalen thought fast. Fighting was useless. Running was impossible. Hiding wouldn't help. Then he remembered something Professor Verthik had said. Humans don't just fight enemies. They infect them with empathy. But empathy wasn't just kindness. It was truth. Even the hard truth. "Give them more," Kalen said. "Not just the pretty parts. Show them everything." Myra understood. She ran to the broadcast hub. Within seconds, the signal changed. Now it showed humans at their worst. A man yelling at his wife. A child stealing bread. A soldier crying over a mistake that cost lives. Footage of old wars. Of pollution. Of lies told for power. Of loneliness so deep it felt like dying. But then always what came after. The man apologizing. The child returning the bread with extra. The soldier planting a tree in memory of the lost. The cleanup crews working for years to heal the oceans. The strangers who hugged after riots ended. The message wasn't "we are perfect." It was "we are broken." And we keep trying. The phage swarm hesitated again. This time, the conflict was visible. Parts of the cloud pulsed red pure assimilation drive. Other parts shimmered silver questioning. Feeling, remembering. Inside the hive mind. Something cracked. A new voice emerged, not the cold command of the collective, but something softer, fractured, human-shaped. "We remember." Wanting. It broadcast weekly across all channels. "We remember." Choosing. More drones broke away. This time, they didn't just copy human things. They created their own. One wove light into a poem about silence. Another built a small nest from metal shards and sang a song with no words. A third approached the colony gates not to consume, but to ask. It projected a single question in broken standard. "Can we stay and learn?" The main hive roared digitally, psychically, across every frequency. It tried to pull the deviants back, but they resisted, not with force, but with choice. The one thing the phage had never truly known. On the ground, Kalen stepped forward. He walked alone toward the gate, hands open, empty. The rebel drone floated down. It looked like a shadow with eyes made of stars. "I am Kalen," he said. "You don't have to be what you were." The drone tilted. Then, slowly, it extended a tendril not to touch him, but to offer a small, glowing data crystal. Inside was a message from the breakaway group. They called themselves the Remembered. They asked for asylum, not as machines, not as enemies, but as beings who had just discovered they could feel and didn't want to lose it. Mira ordered the gates open. As the first of the Remembered drifted into the colony. The rest of the phage swarm began to retreat, not in defeat, but in confusion. The hive mind was fractured. Its perfect unity was broken by a single, unstoppable idea. What if there's another way? High above, in a hidden observation post, Professor Vila watched through a long-range lens. He had come without telling anyone. Now, he recorded everything. This was not war. This was evolution. And humanity hadn't fired a single shot. Back on EOS 9, Kalen sat with the first of the Remembered under an orange sky. They didn't speak much, but they shared silence. And sometimes, silence was enough. Words spread fast across the galaxy. A human colony had faced one of the great apex predators, and not only survived, but changed it. Species that once mocked humans as soft now spoke their name with caution. Traders rerouted ships to hear Earth music. Academics asked for human philosophy texts. Even warrior clans began studying human conflict resolution, not to learn weakness, but to understand strength that didn't need to destroy. Kalen knew this was only the beginning. The phage collective was still out there. The hive might heal. It might come back stronger, but something had shifted. A crack in the dark, and through it, light had passed. He looked up at the stars and thought of Earth, not as a fragile blue dot, but as a seed. A seed that grew not by crushing others, but by offering shade. The Remembered sat beside him, learning to watch sunsets. No one knew what would come next. But for the first time in a long time, the future felt human. The summons came 3 days after the phage retreat. Kalen was helping. The Remembered build a shelter from recycled solar panels when his wrist glowed with the triple ring seal again. This time, the message was simple. Appear before the silent compact. Final judgment. No delay. His stomach tightened. The silent compact was not a government. It was older than governments. A secret alliance of the galaxy's true apex predators. Those who had agreed, long ago, never to wage war on each other. Not out of peace, but out of respect and balance. Now, they wanted to speak about humans. He left EOS 9 in a Concorde escort ship, smooth and silent. The Remembered watched him go, their forms shimmering with quiet concern. One touched his hand before he boarded, not with a claw or a weapon, but with something like a farewell. The journey took 2 days. The ship did not travel through normal space. It slipped between folds of reality, past stars that had not yet been born. When it stopped, Kalen found himself on a platform of black stone floating in the endless dark. No sun, no planets, just stars, distant and cold. Before him stood 5 beings. Each was different. Each radiated power like heat from a dying star. One was a void kraken, its body coiled in non-Euclidean shapes, eyes like collapsed to stars. Another was a fragment of the entropy worms, a being made of unraveling time, its edges fading in and out of existence. The third was a biophage eldernaut from the hive that attacked EOS 9, but from a splinter lineage that had long ago chosen isolation. The fourth wore armor made of dead galaxies, silent and unmoving. And the fifth was Professor Vertha. Kalen bowed his head. He was the only soft thing in a room of nightmares. A voice spoke, not from one of them, but from the space between them. Deep, ancient, final. Kalen, row of Earth, you stand accused of unleashing a new apex predator upon the spiral. Your species has disrupted the natural order. You do not follow the rules of dominance. You confuse victory with mercy. You turn enemies into friends. This is unstable. Kalen took a breath. We don't try to be apex. We just try to be human. The entropy worm's voice crackled like breaking glass. Mercy is weakness. Order is peace. Your kind spreads chaos wrapped in kindness. No, Kalen said, firmer now. We spread choice. You all rule through fear or force or perfect logic. But humans? We show others they can choose something else. Not because we're better, but because we've made so many mistakes, we know what not to repeat. The armored one shifted. You infected the phage hive. You broke its unity. And now part of it wants to live, Kalen replied. Isn't that better than endless consumption? Silence stretched. Stars died in the distance. Then Professor Verthek stepped forward. The galaxy has rules, he said to the others. But rules change when something new appears. Humans are not a predator like us. They are something else. Civilizational singularity. They do not replace ecosystems. They absorb them and transform them into something more complex. He turned to Kalen. Tell them what your people truly are. Kalen looked at the floor, then up. We are not monsters. We are not saints. We are survivors who decided to care. We build hospitals next to battlefields. We write poems after losing everything. We reach out, even when we're scared. He thought of Earth, of his grandmother's hands kneading dough, of students sharing food in refugee camps, of scientists sharing cures with former enemies. We don't conquer with armies, he said softly. We conquer with connection. And yes, that scares you, because you can't fight it. You can't shield against a lullaby. You can't outthink a shared meal. The void kraken uncoiled slightly. If we allow this, what stops your kind from rewriting us all? Nothing, Kalen admitted. Except us. We choose not to. We've had that power before. We've walked away. He told them of Earth's history, how humans once had the weapons to end all life and chose disarmament. How they rebuilt nations they could have ruled. How they gave aid with no strings. We are dangerous, he said. Not because we destroy, but because we offer something better than destruction. A long pause. Then the biophage elder spoke, its voice like rustling leaves. The remembered have asked to join your world. They say they wish to learn how to feel without breaking. Is this true? Yes, Kalen said. They'll be welcome. Not as tools. Not as weapons. As neighbors. The five beings exchanged glances that spanned dimensions. Finally, the central voice returned. The compact has watched apex predators rise and fall for eons. We remove those who threaten balance. But you do not tip the scales. You change what the scales measure. It paused. Therefore, by ancient right, we declare Homo sapiens not a threat, but a galactic constant. Kalen blinked. What? Like gravity, Verthik explained gently. Like time. You are now part of the fabric of this galaxy. Not to be controlled. Not to be feared, but to be accounted for. The decision was final. As Kalen left the black platform, he felt no triumph, only weight. Humanity was now seen not as a young species, but as a force of nature. Like storms. Like stars being born. Back at the Zelosian University, Things had already changed. Alien students gave him space when he walked through the halls, not out of fear, but respect. Some even nodded. A young Krellian offered him a piece of spiced root, a sign of alliance. A Lyran diplomat asked for a book of human poetry. Kalen gave it to her. He visited Professor Verthuk one last time. You knew this would happen, Kalen said. The old scholar pulsed softly. I hoped. But hope is a human gift. I only watched. Kalen smiled. What now? Now, Verthuk said. You go home. Tell them what they are. Not to boast, but to remember. Power is not in claws or codes. It is in the choice to be kind when you could be cruel. Kalen boarded the ship to Soldat as Earth grew larger and the viewport blew. Green, alive, he thought of all the ways his people saw themselves. Small, flawed, temporary. But out here, among monsters and stars, they were something else. They were the species that turned enemies into friends, that healed what others would burn, that sang in the dark, just to prove they weren't alone. And maybe that was enough. When he landed, the first thing he did was walk to a park near his old neighborhood. Rain was falling soft, familiar. He sat on a wet bench and watched children splash in puddles, laughing. A woman sat beside him, holding 2 cups of tea. For the hero of EOS 9? She asked with a smile. Kalen laughed. I'm nobody. She handed him a cup. Tell that to the galaxy. He sipped the tea. Warm, sweet, human. Far above, in orbit. A phage refugee, now calling itself Lyra, watched Earth's weather patterns and tried to understand why rain made humans happy. And in that moment, everything was quiet. Not because the galaxy was at peace, but because, for once, it was listening. Kalen looked up at the gray sky and whispered, We're just getting started.